Have you ever wondered what happens when the sweetest, most trusting person you know is stabbed in the back by the ones they love most? And what if that person, instead of screaming or crying, just smiles and plans their revenge in silence? Well, that person is me. And the story of how it all happened is much darker than you can imagine. And my name is Helena. On the outside, I was the woman who had it all, a 10-year marriage to the man of my dreams, Daniel, and a lifelong friendship with Sophia, my best friend since childhood. We lived in a beautiful house in the suburbs of Los Angeles, had successful careers, me as a renowned architect, Daniel as a rising advertising executive. Our lives looked like something out of a romantic movie, the kind that makes you sigh with envy. To anyone who saw us, we were perfection, but perfection is an illusion. Isn't it? And mine fell apart on a Thursday afternoon, in the most cliché and painful way possible. I had gotten home early from work to prepare a surprise birthday dinner for Daniel. The house was silent, except for muffled music coming from our bedroom. My heart sped up, thinking he might be waiting for me with a surprise. How foolish I was. I walked up the stairs slowly, a smile on my face and a bottle of wine in my hand. The bedroom door was ajar. The music was soft, and then I heard voices. Not Daniel's voice alone. A laughing female voice that I knew as well as my own. It was Sophia. My body froze at the top of the stairs. The wine bottle slipped from my fingers, shattering into 1,000 pieces on the carpet. The sound was loud. But the music and laughter inside muffled the noise. I couldn't move. My eyes were fixed on the crack in the door. And then, I saw them, Daniel and Sophia. In my bed. Together, the world stopped. The air left my lungs. There were no screams. No immediate tears. Just a cold, empty feeling that spread through my entire body, replacing my blood. I felt my heart turn to stone. The scene was burned into my mind with frightening clarity, the silk sheets I had chosen, the soft sunlight streaming through the window, and the raw, naked betrayal right there in front of me. I backed away, making no sound, like a ghost. I went downstairs, picked up the broken glass, and cleaned everything methodically, as if nothing had happened. My hands trembled, but my mind was eerily clear. The pain was so intense that it turned into a kind of anesthesia. I didn't feel anger, not yet. I felt a calculating coldness, when Daniel and Sophia came downstairs a few minutes later, with guilty smiles and evasive looks. I was sitting in the living room, as if I had just arrived. Hi, honey. Hi, Sophie. So glad you're here. I made a special dinner. My voice was calm, even sweet. They looked at each other, surprised by my apparent normalcy. They didn't know that, at that exact moment, as I smiled and pretended that nothing had happened, the architect inside me was already drawing the first blueprints of a plan. A plan that would be executed in silence, meticulously, and would make them wish they had never crossed my path. They thought they broke me. Little did they know they were just giving me the bricks to build my fortress. The night of the discovery was a strange blur. Daniel and Sophia, their faces flushed with guilt and apology, asked me a bunch of questions about the broken wine bottle. Oh, it was just an accident, I replied, with a smile that felt strangely natural. I think the bottle just slipped. They glanced at each other, relieved, but the tension in the room was so thick I could cut it with a knife. I watched them closely, the architect's mind analyzing every detail, every facial expression, every lie. Dinner was served. I had made Daniel's favorite dish, mushroom risotto, and Sophia's favorite dessert, chocolate cake. They ate with nervous haste, praising the food excessively, as if trying to fill the silence with empty words. I ate little, my stomach in knots, but I kept the smile. I was the perfect hostess, the understanding friend, the loving wife. Inside, I was a block of ice, and revenge was already beginning to take shape. When Sophia finally got up to leave, she gave me a hug that was a mix of affection and guilt. Thanks for dinner, Lena, she whispered in my ear. It was amazing. I hugged her back, with an even wider smile. Come back anytime, Sophie. It was the sweetest and coldest lie I had ever told. The plan already had a title, The Silent Game. After she left, Daniel came to me with a look of concern. "Are you okay, honey? You look a little pale." He tried to hug me, but I dodged, pretending to be busy with the dishes. "I'm great, honey. Just tired. It's been a long day." He looked at me for a moment, but his guilt was stronger than his curiosity. He didn't insist. That night, lying in bed, I remembered every detail of the betrayal. It was 10 years of marriage, 20 years of friendship. So many moments, so many confessions, so much laughter. Everything now felt like a lie. I asked myself, when did the lie start to seem real to them? This question would be the driving force of my revenge, the search for the truth that I needed to execute my plan perfectly. The architect in me told me that the first step to building something new is to understand the foundations of what was destroyed. What did Daniel and Sophia think they had? What did they think I was? I needed to get inside their heads to understand the game they were playing, so I could turn the tables in a way they would never see coming. In the days that followed, I became the best actress Los Angeles had ever seen. I kept smiling. I kept being the perfect wife and friend. I planned dinners, suggested group outings, and even pretended to have problems at work so Daniel and Sophia would feel comfortable enough to continue their friendship. They thought they were fooling me. Little did they know that with every one of their secret meetings, I was gathering information, building my case, and mapping out every move like a general preparing for war. Revenge, I decided, wouldn't be hot and quick. It would be cold, silent, and lethal. The days dragged on like slow torture, but I maintained my smile and my facade of a perfect wife and friend. Daniel and Sophia, blinded by their own guilt and my apparent innocence, fell into the trap. They continued their secret meetings, thinking they were masters of deception. Little did they know that every whisper, every glance, every flimsy excuse was a piece fitting into my puzzle. That I began to observe their patterns. Daniel, a man of habit, always had his work meetings on Tuesday and Thursday nights. Sophia, in turn, always had family commitments or yoga classes at the same times. They met in an apartment Daniel rented, a discreet location he used for business. I found this out by tracking his credit card statements, which I, as his trusting wife, had access to. With each new discovery, a part of my heart broke, but the architect in me grew stronger. Damn, why revenge would not be impulsive. It would be a work of art, built with the same precision and attention to detail that I dedicated to my most complex projects. I needed irrefutable proof, not just for myself, but for the world. I wanted them to feel the same shame and helplessness that I felt that night. I started installing hidden cameras in the house, in strategic places they would never imagine. Small lenses disguised in everyday objects, a clock in the living room, a picture frame in the hallway, even a smoke detector in the bedroom. I was an architect, after all, and I understood structures and disguises. The recordings were a treasure trove of information, whispered conversations, stolen affection, and visual confirmation of the betrayal that tore me apart. I watched it all with a coldness that scared me but was necessary for my plan. At the same time, I started investigating Daniel and Sophia's professional lives. Daniel was a brilliant executive but with questionable ethics. He had some financial secrets that, if revealed, could ruin his career. Sophia, on the other hand, was a rising lawyer, but with a history of problematic clients and some gaps in her cases that could be exploited. I was building a dossier, not just of their personal betrayal, but of their professional vulnerabilities. I also began to strengthen myself emotionally. I went to therapy, not to overcome the pain, but to learn to control it. To transform anger into fuel, sadness into focus. I exercised, meditated, and dedicated myself even more to my work, which became a refuge and a source of power. I was rebuilding myself, brick by brick, while they, unknowingly, were digging their own graves. The question that haunted me, when did the lie start to seem real to them, drove me on. I wanted to expose the truth, not just for me, but for everyone they had deceived. I wanted them to see how far they had fallen, and how high I would rise. Revenge was taking shape, and it would be devastating. Life became a stage, and I was the star of a suspense play. Each day was a new scene, and I performed with a perfection that surprised even me. Daniel and Sophia, the villains of my story, were so immersed in their own lies that they didn't see the web I was weaving around them. They thought they were in control, but they were just puppets in my hands. The hidden cameras in the house became my eyes and ears. I spent hours watching the recordings, not out of masochism, but for strategy. Every stolen kiss, every complicit laugh, every one of their secret plans was a valuable piece of data for my dossier. I cataloged everything: dates, times, specific conversations. I was the detective of my own tragedy, and the truth, however painful, was my greatest ally. My professional investigation into Daniel and Sophia was also progressing. I discovered that Daniel was involved in a money laundering scheme at his advertising agency, using offshore accounts to funnel money. It was a federal crime, and the evidence I was collecting was irrefutable. He was good at hiding, but I was better at finding. My skills as an architect, which required meticulous attention to detail and the ability to see beyond the surface, were now being used for a very different purpose. As for Sophia, she was manipulating clients in her divorce cases, inflating fees, and even falsifying documents to gain an unfair advantage. She used her position as a lawyer to exploit vulnerable people. I knew that if this information came to light, she would lose her license and her reputation would be destroyed. What they valued most, their careers and their image, would be the targets of my revenge. I was building my master plan, as I called it in my thoughts. It wouldn't be an explosion of anger, but a silent, controlled implosion that would dismantle their lives piece by piece. I wanted them to feel the ruin, the shame, the loss. I wanted them to see how high I would rise as they fell. To maintain the facade, I even suggested a couple's trip with Daniel, Sophia, and her boyfriend, a poor guy she was also deceiving, I discovered. They were surprised but accepted. It was the perfect opportunity to gather more information, to observe their interactions up close, to see how they behaved under pressure. The trip was a test of my sanity, but I passed with flying colors. I smiled, laughed, and pretended to have fun, while my brain was working overtime, mapping out every flaw in their armor. Therapy was helping me maintain my composure. My therapist thought I was processing the crisis in my marriage in a healthy way, by focusing on myself. Little did she know I was using the sessions to hone my emotional control, to become even colder and more calculating. I was turning myself into a weapon, and every day, I felt more powerful. The question, when did the lies start to seem real to them, drove me on. I wanted them to feel the raw, unfiltered truth. And revenge was just a step away from becoming a reality. Time was my greatest ally. I was in no hurry. With each passing day, Daniel and Sophia sank deeper into their web of lies, and I collected more and more evidence. My house, once a sanctuary of love and trust, had become my operational headquarters. The recording devices and hidden cameras worked perfectly, capturing every detail of the betrayal unfolding under my roof. I became an expert in surveillance technology. I learned to encrypt data, store it in secure clouds, and access it from anywhere, at any time. My architect's mind, accustomed to designing complex structures, was now designing the downfall of two lives. And the precision was the same. The investigation into Daniel's finances revealed an even more intricate network of fraud. He wasn't just siphoning funds from the agency, he was using the company as a front for illicit business, involving money laundering and even some transactions with shell companies abroad. It was much more serious than I imagined, and the implications could be devastating for him, involving not just the loss of his job, but serious criminal charges. Sophia, in turn, was delving deeper into her client manipulation. I discovered that she was using confidential information from her clients for her own benefit, selling divorce secrets to the opposing party in exchange for money. This was a serious ethical violation for a lawyer, and it could result in the permanent loss of her license. In addition to lawsuits for moral and material damages, the dossier was becoming a ticking time bomb. I had enough evidence to destroy their lives in every imaginable way, personal, professional, and legal. I didn't just want them to lose their jobs, I wanted them to lose everything they valued, just as I had lost my peace, and my trust. My therapist continued to praise me for my inner strength. I smiled and nodded, while inside, I was calculating the perfect moment to strike. I was getting stronger, not just emotionally, but also financially. I had begun to transfer my assets to separate accounts, to invest in properties under my own name, to ensure that when the dust settled, I would be safe and have a solid future. The plan was not just about punishment. It was about justice. And about my own liberation. I couldn't truly move on while this charade continued. I needed to expose the truth, not just for them, but for myself, so that I could finally close this chapter and start a new one. The question, when did the lies start to seem real to them, haunted me. I wanted them to feel the raw, unfiltered truth, with no escape. And the moment to reveal that truth was approaching. I could feel it. The calm before the storm. And the storm would be devastating. I was at the peak of my performance. Daniel and Sophia, completely at ease with my acceptance of the situation, became more careless. They spoke openly about their plans for the future, about how they would start over together, and even about how they would compensate me somehow, as if betrayal could be paid for with compensation. Their arrogance was a spectacle in itself, and I absorbed it, turning it into more fuel for my fire. The dossier was complete. I had all the evidence I needed: videos, audio, bank statements, emails. I organized everything into encrypted digital folders, with backups in several secure locations. Each file was a weapon, and I knew exactly how and when to use them. The architect in me had built an impeccable, flawless structure of revenge. The most delicate part of my plan was the execution. I didn't want it to look like a personal attack from a betrayed wife. I wanted it to look like a natural consequence of their choices, a silent, controlled implosion caused by their own actions. Justice, for me, was not just about punishing, but about exposing the truth in a way they couldn't deny. I started planting the seeds. Subtly, I leaked anonymous information to contacts in Daniel's industry, business journalists and competitors. They were vague tips about financial irregularities at his advertising agency, enough to raise red flags, but not enough to be traced back to me. I wanted the pressure to come from within, for the distrust to grow organically. For Sophia, the plan was different. I accidentally left fake documents or compromising emails in places where she might find them, or where someone from her office might see them. They were clues, breadcrumbs that would lead to the discovery of her unethical practices. I knew that a lawyer's reputation is everything, and hers was about to crumble. Meanwhile, I continued to be the perfect wife and friend. I suggested that Daniel and I renew our wedding vows, an idea that made him visibly uncomfortable, but that he couldn't refuse without arousing suspicion. It was the perfect opportunity for a large public event, where I could deliver the final blow. The date was set for 3 months from then. It was enough time for my plan to mature. I also began to prepare for my exit. I hired a discreet and competent divorce lawyer, who didn't know the full extent of my plan, only that I wanted a clean and quick separation. I was transferring my assets, selling some of my shares in joint ventures, and ensuring that I would have a solid financial foundation to start over. The question, when did the lies start to seem real to them, drove me on. I wanted them to live the truth, my truth. And the moment to reveal that truth was approaching. I could feel it. The calm before the storm. And the storm would be devastating. The big day arrived. The event hall was stunning, decorated with the flowers Sophia had chosen and the lighting Daniel had approved. Every detail was a knife in my heart, but I maintained my smile. I was dressed in an elegant, pure white wedding dress, the picture of innocence and love. Daniel, beside me, looked like the perfect husband, with a radiant smile and eyes full of false devotion. Sophia, in her maid of honor dress, was beautiful, but her eyes, when they met Daniel's, sparkled with a complicity that only I could decipher. Guests began to arrive. Friends, family, co-workers. All there to celebrate the vow renewal of the perfect couple. I greeted everyone with a warmth I didn't feel, receiving compliments on how Daniel and I were an example of love and overcoming. The hypocrisy was suffocating, but I was in character. The ceremony began. The officiant spoke about love, loyalty, and eternal commitment. Daniel held my hand, and I could feel the cold sweat on his palms. He was nervous, but I knew it was because of the grandeur of the event, not guilt. He recited his vows, sweet and empty words that I knew were lies. I recited mine, with a firm and emotional voice, words that were true for the Helena I was becoming, but which, to them, sounded like forgiveness. The moment for the projection was approaching. My heart was pounding, but my mind was crystal clear. The video technician was in position, ready for my signal. I looked at Daniel, then at Sophia, who was beside him. They were smiling, oblivious to the earthquake that was about to hit their lives, and then, I gave the signal. The soft music playing in the background was abruptly cut. The lights in the hall dimmed, and a spotlight shone on the giant screen on the stage. The audience murmured, curious. Daniel and Sophia exchanged confused glances. The first image appeared on the screen. It was a photo of Daniel and Sophia, taken by me, at a friend's dinner, where they looked at each other with an intimacy that went beyond friendship. The murmuring in the audience grew louder. Daniel and Sophia turned pale. Then, the video started playing. It was clips from the hidden cameras in my house. Stolen moments in my living room, in my kitchen, and yes, in my bedroom. Audio of their secret conversations, where they spoke about me with disdain, about their plans for the future, about how they would compensate me somehow. The audience was in shock. Whispers turned into gasps of horror. Daniel and Sophia were paralyzed, their faces white as a sheet. They looked at the screen, then at me, their eyes wide with terror and disbelief. The charade was over. The raw, naked truth was there for everyone to see. With every image, every word, the hall became louder, more chaotic. People stood up, shocked, indignant. Mutual friends backed away from Daniel and Sophia with looks of disgust. Their reputation was disintegrating before their very eyes, and it was at that moment, as they watched their lives publicly collapse, that the first question of the story revealed itself, not to the audience, but to myself. How could they have been so blind? I had no idea what was coming next, but I knew that the answer to that question would be the key to the next phase of my story. Chaos erupted in the event hall. The video of Daniel and Sophia's betrayal went viral in a matter of hours. The recording, with its chronological narrative and the most intimate moments exposed to the world, became the most talked about topic on social media and in celebrity news. The scandal was massive, and their fall was as swift as it was brutal. Daniel was fired from the advertising agency in less than 24 hours. The company, concerned about the negative backlash and the federal investigations that would follow, acted quickly to cut ties. His professional reputation was destroyed. No advertising agency in Los Angeles, or anywhere else, would dare to hire him. The career he had worked for years, and which he used to finance his secrets, had crumbled. Sophia didn't have a very different fate. The Bar Association opened a disciplinary case against her the day after the video was exposed. The evidence I had anonymously sent, detailing her fraud and client manipulation, was irrefutable. Her license was immediately suspended, and the prospect of losing it permanently was almost certain. Her clients abandoned her, and some even initiated lawsuits for damages. The rising lawyer became a legal pariah. Their lives, which seemed so perfect on the outside, imploded publicly. I saw them on the news, their faces contorted in a mix of anger, shame, and despair. They tried to defend themselves, to blame each other, but the evidence was overwhelming. No one believed them. The world saw them as traitors and criminals. My house, once the stage of my silent revenge, now became a refuge. I initiated the divorce proceedings, which were quick and uncontested. Daniel no longer had the power to fight, nor the financial resources. He signed the papers, defeated. The house, which was ours, was now mine. The question, is the pain they're feeling now the same as the pain I felt, or does revenge, however just, never fill the void, continued to echo in my mind? I Saw them suffer, and the satisfaction I expected to feel wasn't as intense as the complexity of the emotion that overwhelmed me. There was a sense of justice, yes, but also a deep weariness. Revenge was a heavy burden. Even when successful, I focused on my own life. My architectural firm was thriving. I was receiving proposals for ambitious projects, and my reputation as a competent and resilient professional was only growing. I was rebuilding myself, not on their ruins, but on my own strength, but destiny, as always, had another twist. A week after Daniel's dismissal, I received a call. It was his mother. She was in tears, begging me to meet her. She wanted to talk about Daniel, about Sophia, and about what had happened. I hesitated, but something told me I needed to hear what she had to say. This conversation would be the key to the next phase of my story. The call from Daniel's mother caught me by surprise. Mrs. Lucia, a kind and traditional woman, had always treated me with maternal affection. I knew she was suffering from her son's downfall, and the thought of seeing her in tears tugged at my heart, despite everything. I agreed to meet her at a discreet coffee shop, away from curious eyes and the city's buzz. When I saw her, she looked like a shadow of her former self. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and her hands trembled as she held her teacup. "Helena, my dear," she began, her voice choked, "I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. For everything. I didn't raise Daniel to be like this." I listened in silence. Without interrupting. She poured her heart out about the shame the family was feeling, about how Daniel had isolated himself, refusing to answer their calls. She also talked about Sophia, with a mix of anger and disbelief. And that Sophia. I considered her a daughter. How could she have done this? Mrs. Lucia then looked me in the eyes, with a desperate plea. "Helena, I know you have every right to hate them. But Daniel is destroyed. He's lost everything. His job, his friends. And Sophia too. I know they were wrong, but is there any way you can help them? In some way, ease their situation? The question, is the pain they're feeling now the same as the pain I felt, or does revenge, however just, never fill the void, echoed more strongly in my mind. Mrs. Lucia's pain was real, and she was not at fault at all. Revenge, I realized, had hit innocent people. Though I took a deep breath. Mrs. Lucia, what Daniel and Sophia did was serious. The consequences they are facing are the result of their own choices. I can't undo what happened, nor can I interfere in the legal investigations. She lowered her head, the tears returning. I understand, my dear. I just wish there was a way to ease their suffering. I watched her for a moment. Revenge, however justified, was starting to taste bitter. It wasn't the satisfaction I expected. There was a sense of weight, that I had become something I didn't want to be, even for a just cause. "Mrs. Lucia," I said, my voice softer, "I can't help them directly with their legal or professional problems. But I can. I can offer a path for them to rebuild themselves, if they are willing to pay the price." She looked up, her eyes filled with a fragile hope. "Anything, Helena. Whatever it takes. Daniel needs therapy, real therapy. He needs to confront what he did, not just the consequences, but the reason why he betrayed me. And Sophia needs an honest job, where she can rebuild her reputation from scratch, without shortcuts. If they are willing to do that, I can refer some contacts, but they will have to work for it on their own. I won't give them money, nor will I legally intervene." Mrs. Lucia hugged me, in tears. "Thank you so much, Helena. Thank you so much. I'll talk to him. I know he'll accept. He needs a chance." As I watched her walk away, I felt a lump in my throat. Revenge had been completed, but the void was still there. And the question, is the pain they're feeling now the same as the pain I felt, or does revenge, however just, never fill the void, seem to deepen? The answer, I knew, would not come from their pain, but from my own ability to move on. The conversation with Mrs. Lucia left me with a heavy heart. The revenge that I had planned with such precision and executed with coldness did not bring me the peace I had hoped for. There was a sense of emptiness, a persistent question: is the pain they're feeling now the same as the pain I felt, or does revenge, however just, never fill the void? I was starting to believe that emptiness was an intrinsic part of revenge. An inevitable consequence. In the following days, Daniel and Sophia became ghosts in my life. I heard rumors about them. Daniel was in intensive therapy, battling depression and shame. Sophia was trying to find any kind of job, but her reputation preceded her. No one in the legal field wanted to hire her, and she was facing extreme financial difficulties. The life they had built, based on lies and betrayal, had completely crumbled. I focused on my work. My architectural firm was thriving, with ambitious new projects and a dedicated team. I was building beautiful things, structures that would last. In contrast to the lives I had helped dismantle. It was a form of healing, of channeling my energy into something positive and creative. Despite everything, I couldn't shake the image of Mrs. Lucia, the pain in her eyes. She was an innocent victim in my war. And that bothered me. I didn't regret my revenge, but I started to question the price it demanded, not only from them, but from myself. A month after the evow renewal, I received a call from Daniel. His voice was unrecognizable, hoarse and weak. "Helena," he said, I accepted therapy. I'm going. And I just wanted to tell you that. I'm sorry. For everything. I was a monster. And you were right about everything." He wasn't asking for anything. Just confessing. It was the first time I heard genuine remorse from him, not motivated by the fear of being caught, but by the pain of loss. I listened in silence, not responding. There was no longer anger in me, just a strange melancholy. A few days later, I received an email from Sophia. It was short, direct, and without pretense. "Helena, I got a job. It's in a small town upstate, as a legal assistant in a family law firm. It's a start. And I just wanted to tell you that you were right. I deserve this. And I'm sorry. For everything." That email surprised me. Sophia, the queen of manipulation, was accepting her downfall and the hard work to rise again. Necessity had led her to a place of humility that I never imagined she would reach. The question: is the pain they're feeling now the same as the pain I felt, or does revenge, however just, never fill the void, began to fade. I realized that their pain was different from mine. Mine was the pain of betrayal, of lost innocence. Theirs was the pain of consequence, of lost control and reputation. And the void. The void could only be filled by my own ability to move on, to build a new life, free from the weight of the past. I was starting to understand that revenge was not the final destination, but a path to my own liberation. And that liberation would not come from their pain, but from my own peace. My journey of revenge had come to an end, but Daniel and Sophia's story was just beginning to be rewritten. I kept my distance, watching from afar, receiving sporadic updates through Mrs. Lucia and my social circle. There was no longer a need to infiltrate their lives. The raw, naked truth had already been exposed, and the consequences were unfolding on their own. Daniel, I learned, had left Los Angeles. He moved to a small town upstate, where no one knew him, and started working at a modest advertising agency. It wasn't the glamour of his career's peak, but it was a start. He continued therapy, confronting not just the public shame, but the deep reason for his betrayal, an insecurity he tried to hide under a facade of success. The fall had forced him to look within himself in a way he never would have if my plan hadn't been executed. Sophia had also left the city. She moved to a new town, as a legal assistant in a small family law firm. I learned that, in the first few months, she struggled. Life without luxuries, without notoriety, was a brutal shock for her. But, over time, she began to adapt. She was rebuilding her reputation from scratch, brick by brick, based on hard work and honesty. The manipulative lawyer had been replaced by a woman who was learning to value integrity. The question: is the pain they're feeling now the same as the pain I felt, or does revenge, however just, never fill the void, finally found its answer. No, their pain was not the same as mine. My pain was that of a betrayal that broke my soul. Theirs was the pain of consequence, of the loss of their actions. And the void. The void was not filled by revenge, but by my own rebuilding. I focused on my life. My architectural firm became one of the most sought after in Los Angeles. I was building beautiful things, designing buildings that would be landmarks, and I felt fulfilled. Success was no longer a weapon of revenge, but proof of my own resilience. I was freeing myself from the past, not by destroying them, but by building myself up. One afternoon, I received an email. It was from Daniel. The message was short and direct. Helena, I'm in a new place, and I'm becoming a better person. I don't hate you. I thank you. You gave me the chance to start over. I would never have gotten here without your truth. Sophia's email, which arrived the next day, was even more surprising. Helena, I hated you for everything you did. But today, I understand. You didn't destroy me. You saved me. I'm becoming a real lawyer now. And I forgive you for exposing me. I know it was the right thing to do. That email, it surprised me more than anything else. Sophia forgiving me. Not out of convenience, but for understanding the lesson. My revenge, I realized, had been an intervention. I hadn't destroyed them, I had forced them to face themselves. And my greatest victory was not their downfall, but the redemption they found in the end. The months passed, and Helena's life began to flourish in a way she never thought possible. The architectural firm, once a refuge, was now the center of her passion and success. She was designing iconic buildings in Los Angeles, and her name was becoming synonymous with innovation and excellence. Success was no longer a weapon of revenge, but a testament to her own ability to rise and build something grand from the ashes. She reconnected with old friends who had distanced themselves during the period of her charade with Daniel and Sophia. They saw her as a strong, resilient woman who had overcome one of the greatest betrayals imaginable. Conversations were about new projects, travels, and the joy of living an authentic life. The emptiness that revenge had left was being filled with new experiences and genuine relationships. Daniel and Sophia, on the other hand, continued their journeys of rebuilding, each in their own corner. The news that reached Helena, through Mrs. Lucia or mutual acquaintances, was that they were, in fact, working hard. Daniel, at the small advertising agency, and Sophia, at the family law firm. They were paying the price, not just financially, but also emotionally, for the shame and loss of their old lives. The question that haunted her, is the pain they're feeling now the same as the pain I felt, or does revenge, however just, never fill the void? Had been transformed. Helena realized that their pain was the pain of consequence, of lost control and reputation. Hers, the pain of betrayal, had healed with time and with her own rebuilding. The void was not filled by revenge, but by her own inner peace. She was learning to forgive, not them, but herself, for having carried the weight of anger for so long. Forgiveness was not an act of weakness, but of liberation. She no longer needed their pain to feel strong. Her strength came from within, from her resilience and her ability to build a new life. One day, Helena received an invitation to be the keynote speaker at an architecture conference in New York. It was a great honor, and she was excited. While preparing her talk, she decided to include a part of her personal story, not to expose Daniel and Sophia again, but to talk about overcoming, resilience, and how pain can be a catalyst for growth. She wanted to inspire others, to show that it's possible to rise again, even after the greatest falls. The story of her betrayal, which was once a painful secret, would now become a source of inspiration. She was rewriting her narrative, transforming the victim into a hero. Little did she know that, during this conference in New York, destiny had one more surprise in store, something that would make her question again the extent of her own journey. And the true meaning of forgiveness. The encounter with Arthur's mother at the conference in New York was a turning point. It gave me a mirror to see the impact of my revenge, not just on my enemies, but on the innocent people who were caught in the crossfire. The pain of Arthur's mother was real, and revenge, which I had considered my greatest victory, now had a bitter taste. When I returned to Los Angeles, the first thing I did was look for Arthur. He was in a very dark place, battling depression and shame. Sophia's betrayal had destroyed him, and the public exposure of everything that happened was the final blow. I sat down with him, not as the architect of his tragedy, but as a fellow victim. I listened to his story, his pain, and his confusion. I truly loved her, Helena, he told me, his voice choked. I thought she was the woman of my dreams. And now, I don't know who I can trust anymore. I understood him perfectly. Daniel and Sophia's betrayal had left me with the same feeling of emptiness and distrust. But I rose again. And my revenge, I realized, had given me the strength to not only rise again myself, but also to help others rise. I know how you feel, Arthur, I said. But you can't let someone else's betrayal define you. You are more than your pain. And you have to fight for yourself. I used my contacts, my resources, and my experience to help him find a new job, in a new city. It wasn't a glamorous job, but it was a start. I advised him to seek therapy, to focus on his own healing, and not to let the pain of the past consume him. In the months that followed, Arthur began to rise again, slowly, but with determination. He would call me to give me updates on his progress. On therapy, on the new job. And with every victory of his, I felt a peace that revenge never gave me. The story of Helena, the woman who pretended to forgive and secretly planned everything, had a surprising ending. Revenge, I realized, was not the final destination. It was a path to my own liberation. I didn't become a bitter and vengeful person, I became a strong and compassionate person. And my greatest victory was not the downfall of Daniel and Sophia, but my own ability to forgive, to free myself, and to help heal those who were caught in my silent storm. And the final answer to the question, is the pain they're feeling now the same as the pain I felt, or does revenge, however, just never fill the void? Was that, no matter the pain they feel, the void could only be filled by my own ability to heal, and to help heal the innocent people who were caught in my silent revenge. If you were moved by Helena's journey, don't forget to subscribe to the Silent Confessionals channel for more incredible stories like this. Feel free to comment, what did you like most about Helena's story?